Tonight, a win for Broken Hill water activists as changes to the Murray-Darling Basin plan are voted down, and local firefighters return to the region after a massive mission to control a blaze further north.
This is Southern Cross News with Fraser Goldsworthy.
Good evening. The New South Wales Water Minister says he's planning to withdraw the state from the Murray-Darling Basin plan after changes to hold more water up north were blocked in the Senate. But Broken Hill water activists are celebrating the move as a win.
A victory for vocal opponents.
Now we have a win for the Darling River and the communities below Burke.
Last night, the Greens, Labor and the Nick Xenophon team used their numbers in the Senate to vote down changes to the Murray-Darling Basin plan. They would have reduced the amount of water in the Northern Basin returned to the environment in Queensland and New South Wales by 70 billion litres.
That's extra water in the Darling and will without a doubt mean that fish survive, birds survive, and other wildlife survive, and it will also mean that there'll be water in the Menindee Lakes.
The State Water Minister had a different opinion on the vote though, saying the Greens and Labor are playing politics. New South Wales is now planning to go it alone and pull out of the Basin plan.
We won't be participating in any of the future decisions and the rest of the implementation of the plan, because we now know that things that we agreed to can be undone and unwound in Canberra for the sake of politics.
The Greens were quick to fire back, saying Mr Blair is picking up his bat and ball and going home.
He's having a massive spray because he's not getting his way. This is a loss for the big irrigators in Queensland and New South Wales.
I'll work with Canberra, I'll work with Victoria. We'll look at how we can still deliver a triple bottom line for our communities, but it won't be under the same processes or under the guise of what we see now as a plan that is completely lacking in trust.
The vote on changes to the Southern Basin have been postponed until May 5th. Patrick Reinke, Southern Cross News.
Police say a man doing burnouts narrowly missed children walking along a road in Whyalla last night. Around 6:30, patrols converged on Gordon Street after witnesses reported the alleged driver abandoned the car, but police located him nearby. The 38-year-old was reported for a raft of driving offences, with his car impounded for 28 days. Officers also found a small amount of cannabis and other drug paraphernalia inside the car. He was also drug tested at the scene. He'll face court at a later date. Police have seized cannabis found inside a Port Lincoln home. Acting on a tip-off, officers searched a house in Port Lincoln, seizing 4 plants, 1.3 kilos of dried cannabis, as well as drug cultivating equipment. A 39-year-old man was reported over the incident. He'll face court at a later date. The Health Department has rolled out a new program in the Mid-North to help locals with drug and alcohol addiction. Officers say it means locals will be able to access support in a more familiar environment.
Connecting locals in need to a new community support service now at their doorsteps.
Or stop their use of alcohol or other drugs through developing strategies, goals and methods to cope with withdrawal and manage recovery.
The My Steps program is 100% confidential. It's now visiting Peterborough every fortnight and will be based in the local medical centre.
For the community of Peterborough, it means that it's going to be a regular, consistent visiting service, and they're not going to have to leave their community access help.
The outreach service works closely with clients to identify their strengths to help overcome their addiction.
Something that they need to decide, is it something that they want to stop or just reduce on, set some goals around that, link into other services.
The Mayor's welcomed the program to the community after successful operations in Whyalla, Port Augusta and Port Pirie, which have all seen a significant reduction in the use of alcohol and drugs.
Population to deal with what may be a problem in their lives is a good program, and we're looking to engage the community.
They feel in control and they feel hopeful of their future, and they're able to set goals and feel supported.
Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
Thousands of homes in Broken Hill and surrounding areas were left without power this afternoon after a fault at a Transgrid substation. Over 12,000 customers in Broken Hill, Menindee, Silverton and Whitecliffs were affected by the blackout, which lasted for about 45 minutes. Essential Energy worked to restore power, which came back online at around 3 o'clock. Local firefighters have just returned from tackling a massive blaze in the state's APY lands. Commanders from the region say they're proud of the volunteers' efforts in supporting remote areas.
Tackling a fire like this takes more than a couple of crews.
And then our crews were doing some burning off of that to make the control lines wider. So if the fire did get close to the communities, which it did at Kenmore Park, the community itself was safe.
This APY lands blaze started on Thursday last week. CFS members from Port Augusta as well as volunteers from Snowtown, Crystal Brook, Gladstone and Wilmington all helped to relieve tired local crews.
It's a full day's travel to get there and a full day's travel back, so that alone is a big effort. So, yeah, can't thank them enough.
By Tuesday, the blaze had burnt through 125,000 hectares of land. Fires of this size in the far north aren't uncommon, but this one came too close to many homes.
The size of the fire is not really the determining factor here. It was more the assets that were under threat.
The commander says he's proud of his crew's effort in protecting local far north communities.
Bit of good luck, I suppose. Bit of rain has helped up there, and it's probably the winds have helped the fire to burn back on itself. Also, the fire's probably run out of fuel in some places. We've had some significant fires up there in September and in November, so there was actually some burnt ground there as well.
Amelia Simpson, Southern Cross News.
After the break, the Broken Hill community rallies around the local scout group. We'll tell you why next. The last sea ferry used for the Lucky Bay service has been sold to new owners in Southeast Asia, but a new ferry has been designed to replace it. Last August, the service was suspended due to construction of new port facilities at Lucky Bay. During that time, a new electric hybrid vessel has been designed for the Spencer Gulf service. The new ferry will have the potential to transport grain and other goods to the region. The future of Port Augusta's City Safe program is under threat after a cost-saving report recommended the council withdraw its support. But Nick Xenophon's party says it'll swing in to save the crime prevention program.
Dramatic reductions in crime, graffiti and disorderly behaviour, all thanks to this.
I mean, that's reduced dramatically. Very rarely will you sight graffiti around the place, and if it is, it's pretty well cleaned up pretty quick. So,
City Safe was first introduced to Port Augusta 10 years ago, which has seen guards patrolling the town's city centre 24/7 in a bid to reduce petty crime. Now, under council's cost-saving endeavours, the $200,000 a year successful program could be facing the chop.
Part of that process, they've reviewed the City Safe Patrol contract, and they've put up a suggestion that we may not renew that after June.
At an operations meeting this week, council voted to throw City Safe a lifeline until this time next year. After that, its future is unclear. If elected, SA Best has pledged to help save the program by contributing half the cost over 5 years.
And that's why we're pre-committing that we believe as a state should be coming to the table and should be ensuring that this program does continue to maintain moving forward.
That's fantastic news. We'll accept any funding from any party or any area that can assist us to provide what we need to the community, so that's great news.
I'm not sure why SA Best would have offered this funding support to Port Augusta and not the Ceduna Council, which also uses the City Safe program.
Amelia Simpson, Southern Cross News.
St Mark's College in Port Pirie has begun transitioning Year 7 students to its senior campus. It's the first school in the region to carry out the move before a statewide change to occur next year.
A first for the Mid-North.
I was excited to get to be the first ones to come over and get the experience to work with new teachers and the new lessons.
The initiative by Catholic Education South Australia will see most Catholic schools in the state transition Year 7s to senior campuses by 2019. But St Mark's began preparing students for the move last year.
Transition program for the Year 6s last year, and so they visited a number of times. They came to our specialist facilities, they visited the farm, they saw the opportunities ahead.
The principal says the decision to make the move earlier was thanks to the school's campus already having the infrastructure to accommodate the students.
I was really excited to get my laptop and use that around campus, and I'm really excited for all the different classes we get.
A buddy system has been put in place to ensure the younger students settle into the new campus well.
Feels great, and I was really excited to move over, and I knew I could have friends that I could depend on.
Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
The Broken Hill community has rallied behind the local scout group after thieves broke into its hall. Bales of cans were taken, which are vital for the club's activities.
The Broken Hill community have actually been very nice and got behind us. A number of people have donated cans for us to go and cash in.
The Silver City Cinema was quick to lend a hand though, helping to organise a movie fundraiser event on Saturday morning. Still to come tonight, we go behind the scenes of the latest tourism experience on the EP. That story next. Well, we all know the Eyre Peninsula is renowned for its land and water-based tourism sites, but one operator is taking the experience to the skies. Port Lincoln Joy Flights is offering thrill seekers a new perspective of the region.
Taking tourism to new heights. In an open cockpit, 1,000 feet above sea level, looking over the Eyre Peninsula, veteran pilot Mike Damp says he never gets tired of this view.
No, never.
Mr. Damp is an award-winning surgeon who's dedicated most of his life flying throughout South Africa, saving lives. The flying doctor then relocated to South Australia and spent 14 years as the resident surgeon in Whyalla. Today Mike is retired from medicine, but his passion for flying is sky high.
Everybody should experience it from the air.
And it's not hard to see why. Mike began Port Lincoln Joy Flights just to share his love affair with flying with the rest of the region.
The vast majority enjoy it, and the thing that has amazed me is that women seem to enjoy it more than men, and elderly women seem to enjoy it more than young women, so it's a maturity onset thing, I think.
His yellow Waco biplane is one of the most revered birds in the sky. Built for 3 people and capable of pulling aerobatic manoeuvres, the thrilling trip promises an adventure for young and old.
The oldest person I had was a 94-year-old lady. I've had people with disabilities in the front cockpit, physical disabilities, mental health issues in the front, and they've all loved it. And
Jason Kemp, Southern Cross News.
A retro 80s band, a saucy German crooner and a rock band from the AP Ylands will join local talent to headline this year's Unearthed Festival in Whyalla. Council says this year's lineup is set to make waves across the state.
Launched to a somewhat sceptical audience, huge crowds turned out for the first Unearthed Festival in Whyalla. The marquee Easter event is returning this year, with council keen to build on last year's success, which isn't going unnoticed in Adelaide.
This year, everyone's come from the woodwork. They're actually chasing us up.
It's released its 2018 programme, which features a mix of Adelaide fringe and local performers. Kinara Moon Band, an Indigenous band from the AP Ylands, will showcase its unique mix of tunes. But the feature singing act will be the legendary retro cover band Chunky Custard, who will be returning to its roots.
He'll definitely be pushing that fringe envelope, but it is, again, a family-friendly environment, so, he'll push the boundaries.
A Touch of Germany will also make an appearance, with Hans, the German crooner, making his Unearthed debut.
We definitely used to see them come to Whyalla once a month back in the day, so, a lot of Whyalla people will know who they are.
And local acts will also get their chance to shine.
Their support, the local support, is just phenomenal. They just want to help.
John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
No doubt it'll be a great festival. Time now for fishing tips.
Welcome another week around the Gulf Fishing Tips. Yellowfin whiting are on the menu at the moment. We can't go wrong with them. Anywhere from Talawi Beach right through to Barrows Beach, you'll get yourself a feed. But what I've been told, you need to mix up the bait a little bit because they are looking for something a little bit different to eat. We also go through, there's plenty of snapper. The Illusion's now open and there's a few being caught in the deep gutters in between the Eastern Shoal and Checker Buoy, and also on the Lowly Rip. There's a few tuna a little bit further south if you want to go chase that, but also King George whiting are starting to pop up around the place, which is quite unusual. But if I was to try that, I'd be somewhere around the Port Broughton area, a bit further south.
G'day and welcome to this week's Fishing Tips from Port Augusta, Jewel North. Well, a bit of respite from the heat at the moment, just coming off a dodger tide, so you should be starting to get some good fishing in. Lots and lots of crabs around, as you'd expect at the moment, but really big and full of meat. There is a bit of kingfish action down around the powerhouse, so just keep an eye out for that. And there are some snapper down the Seabird and also at the powerhouse as well. And they're getting some good salmon up and around Port Patterson. And if they're getting Port Patterson, you'll be getting right along the eastern seaboard down around the Oyster Run down to Chinaman's Creek as well.
Land-based around Whyalla, there's been some really good numbers of silver whiting coming in along the foreshore and also out on the big sandbar on the low tide. So if you walk out to the sandbar, fish along the weed line, there's been some really good sized silvers along there. Down towards Cowlard's Landing, it's been great for raking crabs down there. If you're prepared to jump in the car and go for a drive down to Menini Beach, there's been some good crabs down there as well. And also out around Fitzgerald Bay and False Bay, there's been some nice crabs along there too. For the boaties, there's been a fair few snapper coming in from down the southern grounds. Tip is to fish the deeper water. There's also been some fish in the shallows out front of Cowlard's Landing on both sun up and sun down.
G'day and welcome to Fishing Tips in Port Lincoln. Well, locally in the bays there's been some blue crabs around in Proper Bay and also up around Louth Bay. Once again, not massive numbers, but really good sized crabs, and most guys are getting a dozen or 15, which is more than enough for a feed. Also in local bays, the whiting have been pretty small. There have been a few fish, but the trumpeters have been in plague proportions. Out wide, down south of Port Lincoln, around South Neptune Islands, there's been some tuna and a few kingies down that way. And there have been some good nannygai caught on the reefs down around that way as well, and on the backside of Williams Island. Moving over to Coffin Bay, there's been some salmon trout and garfish in the bay system. And out around Farm Beach, the whiting have been a little bit patchy, but some reasonable fish up to mid 30 centimetres. Plenty of offshore news out around Rocky, Greenley, Perforated and Hummocks, with plenty of tuna coming in this week. And there has been some Samson fish and some kingies out around Rocky. That's all for this week. We'll see you again next week with more fishing tips.
Stay with us. After the break, we'll have all the local weather details with Abby Donaldson. And Abby, we had another lovely sunny day around the region.
Yes, we certainly did, Fraser. Blue skies and sunshine for most centres, but it heats up again into the weekend and early next week. I'll have all the details next. Welcome back. Well, there was no shortage of sunshine today. It cooled down slightly in Port Augusta, 28 the top. Temps remained around the mid-20s for Port Lincoln, a cloudy day there. It was warm in Broken Hill, 33 the top, and a pleasant 27 the max for Port Pirie. To the satellite now, and bright looking cloud over northern parts of South Australia with a low pressure trough is causing some drizzle in areas and a few storms, but patchy cloud in other areas is why we're seeing these fine conditions. And if you're heading out on the waters tomorrow, we'll see southerly winds shifting southwesterly up to 20 knots, seas at 1.5 metres with a south-southwesterly swell, and the sun will pop up at 5 to 7 tomorrow morning. Now looking at the forecast for your Friday plans, it's warming up in Port Augusta, 32 the top. There's a fair bit of cloud cover about in the west, and with that we could see some light showers. A quite cool 23-degree day forecast for Port Lincoln. It's a different story further inland, sunny and 30 the top for Woodner. That's the same for Port Pirie, and it's looking like fine, pleasant temps everywhere else. It's warming up around all centres into the weekend after some cool, refreshing weather in Port Lincoln this week. Temps are creeping into the high 20s by Monday, but we should still see lovely fine conditions there. A similar story for Cleve, but it's an absolute sizzler in Woodner as the mercury rises to a very hot 37-degree day on Monday. And it's no different further up the Gulf. As you can see, it starts to heat up over the coming days. We'll see temps in the low 30s for Whyalla and Kadina. Monday looking like the hottest day there for both centres, but Port Augusta is in for a scorcher as the mercury rises to 38 degrees on Monday. And continuing with the theme, temps are certainly warming up in Port Pirie, hot and 36 the top on Monday. It's not as hot in Clare, but it will still be warm as temps hover around the low 30s, and it's a sizzler in Broken Hill. So Fraser, enjoy these milder conditions because we're in store for a heat wave.
We certainly are. Thanks, Abby. And that's the local news for this Thursday. Thanks for joining us. I'll have some updates later. Until then, enjoy your evening. Good night.